Many people probably don't realize this, but strongman is not a financially attractive sport, and in fact only a few elite athletes in the world can afford the life of a professional. One example of this is that the highest prize money in the world's strongest men competition in recent years has been $50,000, which is around $2,000 less than a place in the top 16 at the World Darts Championships. Either way, even after winning a championship, strongmen are not set for the rest of their lives and often take on extraordinary challenges to earn a living. The most recent example of this is Eddie Hall. In addition to fighting the Nefedi brothers or Thor, who according to the latest data has lost 50 kilograms compared to his form when he was still lifting 500 kilograms, he is involved in many activities on television or in his social media. His YouTube channel already has more than 3 million subscribers. Hall regularly publishes material on a variety of topics there. However, YouTube is not the only medium on which Hall can be watched. The famous The Beast appeared on the History Channel along with Brian Shaw, Nick Best, and Robert Oberst in a series of programs entitled The Strongest Man in History, in which they attempted to recreate the historical or even legendary acts of strength of famous figures from the past. Mariusz Pudzianowski has already realized that you can earn more money with martial arts than with strongman. After finishing second at the WSM 2009, the Dominator put on MMA gloves for the first time. Mariusz is also known for his entrepreneurial spirit. He runs a transport company, has many employees, and as he says about himself, he's not afraid of any work. Despite his busy schedule, Pudzian still keeps his body in amazing shape and regularly publishes his workouts, which amaze both average and above average people. The strongman's career has also earned the Pole several television contracts. In addition to taking part in numerous entertainment programs, talk shows, and episodic roles in TV series, Pudzian also took part in the Polish version of Dancing with the Stars, where he made it to the final. Dressed as Shrek, he showed that he doesn't lack distance from himself. Magnus Samuelsson was a little luckier in the Swedish edition of Dancing with the Stars, as he won the entire program. The Scandinavian giant is as well known in his home country as Pudzianowski is in Poland and is also a very well-known personality worldwide. Interestingly, Samuelsson was offered a role in the film Gladiator, but as he didn't recognize any names in the cast and assumed it would be a B category film, he refused to accept. Speaking of film careers, the world's strongest man of the years 1997 and 1999, the Finn Jouko Ahola, should also be mentioned at least briefly. The popular Finnish athlete retired after just 4 years as a professional, even though he was practically in the prime of his form. A good knowledge of English and his impressive stature allowed him to make his debut on the big screen in the war drama Invincible. Ahola will also be familiar to fans of the TV series Vikings, where he played the role of Kauko. He also played the role of Hamid in the series Border Town. Although he has moved on to another field, Ahola has continued to appear at WSM competitions for many years, but already in the role of a referee or assistant. The scenario of a world champion relinquishing his belt and then taking on the role of a judge or moderator is not unique to former strongmen. World champion Sven Carlsen, 3-time world champion Bill Kazmaier, and 4-time world champion Magnus Magnusson also stayed at the WSM. Carlsen had by far the most episodic role, as we only saw him as a guest of honor in the WSM coverage for ESPN. However, the adventure on the other side of the competition for the other two athletes is much bigger. You could say that Bill Kazmaier's career had 2 finals, one after his 3rd championship in 1982 when he was suspended by the WSM for known reasons, and after his return in 1988. Kaz's monstrous looks piqued the interest of wrestling promoters, and by 1986 he received a contract with the WWF Federation, which allowed him to perform throughout the United States, Canada, and even Japan. Thanks to the slightly higher prize money from the WSM, which he received for his victory in 1981, totaling $80,000, he was able to open his own fitness club, which has remained on the market for over 20 years. After the definitive end of his career and the separation from the WSM, we see him almost every year at the World Championships. He is also a presenter at the Arnold Classic and Giants Live competitions, where his passionate commentary shows how engaged he is in what he does. I mentioned Magnusson's name right next to Kazmaier for a reason, as both men are heavily involved in today's contests and even faced each other in the halftime show of the Giants Live event 2019 at the Hercules Hold. It must be made clear that when someone is able to do such things at the age of 66 in Kazmaier's case and 57 in Magnusson's case, we are talking about super superhuman resilience and longevity, breaking the stereotype, in my opinion, that they will definitely feel the strain as they get older. Let's talk briefly about Magnusson, who is not only involved in the organization of contests, but is still the most frequently invited referee at competitions due to his strict and often unforgiving judging, which both Mr. Hall and Mr. Bjornsson had to experience firsthand. In 2014, during the European Championships, the Beast attempted to set a world record in the deadlift, and at that time, 471 kilograms were packed onto the bar. Eddie Hall lifted the bar, but instead of lowering it in a controlled manner as required by the rules, he simply dropped it. Magnus Ver Magnusson did not acknowledge the attempt, which clearly annoyed the Englishman. However, after he had cooled down, he recognized the Icelandic's point of view and described him as one of the strictest and fairest referees. Another incident concerned the WSM contest 2017 and Thor's unrecognized repetition in the overhead press, which I can talk about in a separate material, as well as the whole conflict of the giants, to which Magnusson undoubtedly made his contribution. Based on the stories of the athletes mentioned above, one could come to the conclusion that every winner of the world's strongest man is condemned to a life in the spotlight or in front of the camera. However, the reality is very different and can even end in a life on the margins of society. Jan Virtanen and Gary Taylor are two prime examples of this. The first became a carpenter again after the end of his career, while the Welshman dedicated himself to working with the most dangerous offenders in British prisons and tried to re-socialize them by training rugby with them. A sad fate met the Dutchman Ted van der Paar, champion of the year 1992. The Dutch giant suffered a head injury during his career, which led to short-term memory problems. This health setback, together with spinal injuries, has led to Ted currently living on welfare. Finally, a word regarding the silhouettes that the strongmen have retained, or the lack of them. First and foremost is perhaps the biggest transformation in a career that also takes into account the time before the strongman, that of Britain's Glenn Ross. From Mr. Ireland title to over 200 kilogram static monster and winner of the British strongman titles. You'll just have to take my word for it that it's one and the same man in the photos. Ross already brought huge mass to the strongman stage, not just muscle, so his post-career metamorphosis isn't particularly impressive. This is not the case for another British athlete, Jeff Capes, who has looked like a typical strongman throughout his career. Although he wasn't exactly a slim guy in his strongman days, it's safe to say that there is a difference in his appearance. These are of course extreme cases, and in contrast we can name the aforementioned Kazmaier Virastyuk or the still active Savickas, who even today look like they could rip someone's head off with one move. Let me know in the comments who you think has had the best career after the end of their strongman journey. That was Steel Shock. See you in the next video.